Good afternoon, Professor Rajat, and thanks a lot, sir, for giving me opportunity to come on my channel, that is your PD Education.
Thank you.
Okay, Professor Rajat, this is a great opportunity for me to interact with you. And for every interaction, sir, I come prepared with some of the questionnaire, some of the questions. And I've gone through your profile. And on the basis of that, sir, I prepared some questions here. And I'll be discussing one by one all these things with you. So my first question normally is related to the personality and his journey only. So, sir, I came to know that you are graduate in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur, and after that you did your doctorate in computer science and automation from IISc Bangalore. So, I want to ask you, sir, why this was a shift in your, branch, that is your specialization from electrical engineering to computer science, and how your journey was till being director of IIT Bhilai.
Oh, wonderful. I think I'll probably. So first thing is, in those days, it was not actually considered to be a change in specialization
Right, sir.
because computer science was never a standalone department. In fact, when I joined my PhD in IISc Bangalore, it was not a department at that time. It was
Right, sir.
a school of computer science and automation.
Right, sir.
Subsequently, it became department. So I joined the school, but came out, did my graduation from the department.
Right, sir.
So it is like that. And even when I did my BTech in IIT Kanpur, and when I joined IIT Kanpur, it was in 1981. Except Kanpur and IIT Bombay, nowhere else computer science existed. So it was not really a department. Kanpur was one of the oldest department, but competition there was very, very high. And, it was virtually, the seats were very, very small and number of people could not do. But then it doesn't mean that computer education was not there.
Right,
Computer
sir.
education was typically part of electrical engineering.
Right, sir.
And even at IIT Kanpur, when I did my BTech in electrical engineering, it was largely in all the digital circuits, digital electronics, and all that. This was basically part of electrical engineering at that time. And so were the other areas like power systems and communications and controls and all that. That was also like traditional electrical engineering. But apart from that, digital systems were major component of electrical engineering at that time.
Right, sir.
Even today, it is like that, but more and more things are also happening in computer science. Computer science since that time has grown enormously. So it is really not a specialization, but a shift in specialization, I mean. But it's basically is computing at that time also for me. However, my story of journey to IISc itself is a very interesting one because after doing my BTech, I joined a job,
Okay.
and I think it was my well thought of strategy of doing a job, and I joined Hindustan Computers Limited at that time for the job. But 2 months when I did my job, and at that time before. You take up a job or something, even today people will look at multiple opportunities.
Right.
Higher education was one of the opportunity that I had thought of. So I had appeared in the GATE exam. I have appeared, applied for various other disciplines and all that. And I had also applied to MS program in IISc Bangalore. I had also applied to MTech program in IISc Bangalore. And when MTech program was primarily on the GATE basis, I got admission there, but I declined that admission because I had just joined the job in Noida. And 2 months from then, I realized that maybe I want to do the higher education and not really the industrial job, because industrial job at that time, just to give you the time frame or the contemporary times, Hindustan Computers Limited at that time had just started making the PCs, IBM PCs, and their entire production would be about 100 PCs in a month.
Okay.
So it was like that kind of a time frame. And mostly these PCs would be hand assembled. There would be operators who would be soldering on the PC motherboards, inserting the components and all that. So it was mostly hand assembled PCs. And we were actually taken for digital systems and all that, computing systems. And our first jobs were actually to look at these PCs and test them and these kind of things and develop some applications and these kind of stuff. So, so basically, that is how it was at that time. And I had also applied for higher education. Okay. So MTech I had left, and therefore there was no scope to go back to MTech if I were to decide the other way. However, just around this time, a call came for MSc, I mean MS program,
Yes, sir.
MS by research. A call came from MS by research program, and I decided to go to Bangalore for interview. So I went to Bangalore, took leave from my organization. I told my boss that I'm going for this particular thing. He was from Bangalore. He was very happy about it. And in fact, he said, that's a good place. You should go and appear in the interview. So I went and appeared in the interview. And after the interview, I came back. Okay. And after about 10 days, I got the offer also.
Okay.
So that's how it was. Then by that time, I realized that I don't want to continue in the job. So I just took that higher education offer, MS by research, and I landed up in Bangalore in Indian Institute of Science. And after that, I converted that to PhD program. So that's how I came into PhD, and it has been a remarkable journey. You know, it's like got to learn many things in IIT, then of course in IISc, and then in the job.
Okay.
So it has been a huge amount of learning, especially in this area where things are moving rapidly, changing every day. You know, if I look at my thing in about 35 years of my journey, it has been humongous, you know, change which has happened. So it has been a very good upgradation, a very good switch of, you know, specialization in that sense.
Professor Rajat, you are graduate of IIT Kanpur, sir, and during that time and even now, graduates used to fly. They used to go abroad, and you are also from computer science and electrical background. So that was the era when majority of people used to go into companies like, as you said, IBM and all, and never used to think about academics and research and teaching. Yours is a unconventional little bit, sir. So I want to ask you, sir, why, how it unconventional thing hit you thought of and pursuing the career in teaching after that?
So see, I don't think at that time I thought too much about it.
Okay.
It's just that I thought maybe I don't want to go outside. I want to be in India.
Okay.
And my folks, my grandfather and parents, they were all very supportive. And they said, yeah, whatever you want to do, you can do. And I thought of not going to outside of the country, primarily because I had a mixed feeling, you know, whether I should go there or not go there.
Yes.
There is a land of opportunity, but there is also, you know, land of loneliness.
Yes.
So it's like, you know, what is that you want to do? And it's just that I decided to continue in India.
Okay.
And my ambition at that point was to actually do a job. And I did take a job in Hindustan Computers Limited. The interesting part was basically that, you know, when I actually took this job and all that and did not go out, I think a lot of people actually told me even at that time, almost 100% people from IIT would go out.
Yes,
So a
sir.
lot of people told me that you are actually being different from everybody else.
Right, sir.
But I guess that was the destiny. And that's how it actually happened. So I continued to be in India, look for the job, got higher education, did the higher education. And after doing the higher education, I applied for faculty positions. At that time, PhDs were largely, given jobs in a higher education only. And therefore, I applied in variety of places in IITs, IISc and all that. IIT Kanpur was the first to offer me a job, and I joined there. And then, therefore, there was no point to look for any other thing. And I continued to be a faculty member in IIT Kanpur.
IIT Kanpur, yes, sir. That's great. Uh, Professor Rajat, now I move little bit towards your other academic experiences, sir. You have been visiting scientists at Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab, CSAIL, MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So we would like to ask you, sir, how the research facilities there are different from India, because as you know, IIT, MIT, these are the things which come to the mind of any technocrat. So MIT is one of the world reputed institutes, so are the IITs. But we would like to ask from you, sir, you have spent almost 4 decades in IIT system and you have been to MIT also. We would like to ask you, sir, how MIT system is different, MIT research facilities are different from what we have in IIT. And now you are heading one of the IIT also as director. So can we emulate those kind of things back home?
I think that's a very good question that you asked, because this often actually comes to my mind also, and say, in what way the education and research different in countries like America and others, and in what way are they different here. And I think MIT was a great example, MIT being the top-notch university in America, and IITs being top-notch universities in India. So it's a fair comparison to compare IITs and MIT. So when I look at these institutions, there are 3 different ways you actually look at. One is the classroom education, okay, and the second one is research facilities. Third one is the social structure, and I would add to that the fourth one is the bureaucratic structure or the managerial structure. And I'll actually go by each one of them.
Okay.
Often it is said that the education there is good in MIT. The reality is not that. Reality is that both places education is at par.
Okay.
Whether it is IITs or MITs, education is at par. People actually get to know the best in class education. People actually get to do best in class assignments and all that. So it is absolutely identical. I don't see any problem.
Great.
Even when we look at the research infrastructure, again, there are 2 kinds of things, the people and the equipment. Equipment wise, maybe MIT was top notch place, a little better than what IITs are. But then in computing, typically you don't look at too much of research equipment. You look at the computing environment, and computing environment by and large remain the similar. So I don't think there is a major difference between MIT and IIT in terms of facilities.
Right.
But when we look at the people, MIT is able to attract the best in class from all over the world. IITs still cannot do that. There is no way it actually is a possibility here because of the various kinds of hurdles that actually come. These are governmental hurdles, these are immigration hurdles, these are cultural hurdles. There are various different ways. The people there are very different than people here. Okay, the people there are top notch. They come from all over the world. They are some of the most innovative people. Look at various kinds of things and all that. And here it actually may not be really about the same, even though we hire people from all over the world, but we still hire largely Indians.
Right.
Okay, so there is a less amalgamation of cultural identities there. I think the biggest change that we see is the culture. In those 2 places, the cultures are very, very different. In Indian culture is primarily, you can actually go and talk to your neighbors, you can go and talk to your friends, people are more friendly around and all that. in America, people are more individualistic. Okay. But then there is a different kind of friendship that actually happens. It's not that the friendship doesn't happen, but it's a different kind of friendship. And there's a very different cultural setup there and a cultural setup here. I think the largest difference that I see is in terms of the bureaucratic processes.
Okay.
India is full of bureaucratic processes. For everything that you need to do, there are, you have to go all the way up in the ladder to get the approvals. The empowerment of the lower cadre is lesser. Processes are too cumbersome. For everything, you have to fill out a form or something other. Whereas in most places in United States, for example, in MIT, the processes were less bureaucratic. I mean, you could often just pick a phone and call somebody and say, this is what you need, and the thing will come, right? Here, in order to even buy certain things or do something, you call somebody and then say, okay, I'll send you a form, you please fill this form, and then you take it somewhere, take 2 or 3 steps of approvals, and the procurement processes are lengthy. It may take 2 to 3 weeks. There it may take 1 to 2 hours, maybe 5 hours, maybe two days, or shorter periods and all that. The bureaucracy, the bureaucratic processes, the processes are too bureaucratic, and that actually takes enormous amount of time. Okay, an enormous amount of energy. That is, I think, the biggest change. The second change was that if you were to actually work on some equipment, some component, something of any lab, you could just go and take permission and start working. I mean, often you don't even require a permission, you just go and start working. Here, even in CSAIL, or MIT, the labs were individual oriented. They belong to individual faculty members or individual set of people. But as a student, we could actually enter any lab or could work or take a small permission here and there and start working. Here, the permission setups are far much more complex. There are, labs which are for common use labs, departmental labs and all that. But then because they are departmental labs, there is effectively no single ownership. Okay. As a result, the maintenance, the equipment, the upkeep of equipment, the novelties in the equipment, the state-of-art equipment, it actually takes time for people to set up, because it requires a democratic process. It requires committees to look at, then procurement and all that. So it's like everywhere you need to justify your need. You want to buy a computer. Why do you want to buy this computer? You first justify that. Create documentation on that. Then why do you want this particular computer? Why not that computer? Again, justify that. Justify the funds, and I mean all that kind of a huge bureaucratic process. And by the time it lands up, your half of the energy and the excitement of using that equipment is already narrowed down a lot. So that is the biggest impediment, in my opinion, in the culture from there and here. I think otherwise people probably can be built. Facilities, they already exist. They are more or less the same. Students are equally bright on 2 sides of the seas. So they are actually, I don't see much change, except that here we actually don't get students from all over the world. We get students largely from India. Right. And even in those admissions, there are again enormous amount of rules to say how much to take from girls, how much to take from boys, how much to take from this category, that category, this. Yes. So there are just too many rules which define the processes. Right. And the rules are so complex that very rarely understood by people. So this is the biggest impediment, the bureaucratic setup, bureaucratic process.
That is okay. Okay. Professor Rajat, what we understand that IITs were created as a different kind of institutes in India, sir. And it was expected that IITs will have some kind of autonomy and flexibility. So you have very beautifully mentioned about the differences in which you said there's a bureaucratic hurdles also. Now, sir, I'm interacting with someone who is also heading one IIT, and that to a new IIT, IIT Bhilai. So, sir, I want to ask you that how come people like you can bring that change which you want to see in IIT system, because you are head of the institute now? And is it possible at all?
So it's not that it is not possible. It is of course possible, but I think the bureaucracy is deep rooted in our system.
Okay.
You know, it's not just in IIT. It is actually in the social structure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like everywhere. It's terribly or heavily deep rooted in our psyche.
Okay.
Okay. So it actually requires a change in the entire social structure. It is not just that IITs can actually help it.
Okay.
So, in other words, I mean, IITs are definitely less bureaucratic than many other engineering institutions in the country. But are they less bureaucratic compared to universities outside? The answer is no.
Yes,
I mean, if you
yes.
compare the two, then there is a big difference. They're far much more bureaucratic, for example, in terms of processes that are there in MIT. So, yes, they are better when we say they are less bureaucratic. They are less bureaucratic compared to universities, compared to other educational institutions and all that. But still, they're pretty bureaucratic. Now, whenever we try to reduce some of these things, India is a democratic setup. So you actually have to take everybody around with you. So now when you discuss, since it is so deep rooted in our psyche, it almost, you know, whenever you want to reduce something, whenever you want to do something, somebody will have a genuine reason and very genuine reason to not reduce it either. Right? And therefore, there is a compromise that gets set in. You know, you take a middle path, and then when you take a middle path, you know, it actually, unfortunately, still remains bureaucratic compared to outside.
Right, sir.
The second problem is in our societies also, in general, I think people's attitude is also to take advantage of the processes.
Right, sir.
Okay. I mean, it is, you know, it is something known as honesty or some, you know, which is only when it is implemented, when it is somebody being watched. But as soon as, you know, it's like not very uncommon to actually in the societies where parents or friends or something will be asking for favors.
That's true.
Right? You know, you do something here, you do something there and all that. That favoritism or favorism is a very common ingredient in our society.
That's true.
Now, if the processes are less bureaucratic, then the chances of this favorism actually utilizing or using or misusing the system becomes very, very high.
Yes.
In order to beat that phenomena,
yes,
it is often the bureaucracy that is actually brought in.
That's true.
So this, you know, so it's like there's no single person who will actually give approval. You know, you require one layer, then second layer, and then third layer before approvals are given, which basically means that one person is not going to be asking for favorism from one person, but, you know, he actually has to ask either 10 of them or 15 of them, or come only on merit. So this is the basic, you know, system in our society. I'm not saying whether that system reduces the favorism or not. That's a different debate altogether. But the fact is that these two things actually go hand in hand.
Right.
And I think that's the reason why our systems are becoming more bureaucratic everywhere, cutting across the entire society framework.
Understood. Professor Rajat, you very beautifully explained, sir, the 4 factors which separate IITs from the global institutes like MIT, in which you mentioned that as far as education is concerned, more or less same. You said, sir, research, infrastructure, etc. are also more or less same. But you mentioned that, yes, socio-cultural ecosystem is different because of the kind of people these institute in USA gets from all over the world, and bureaucratic hurdles. Sir, I want to bring to your kind notice the recent new education policy in which government is also now inviting top universities, globe top universities to come and set up their campuses in India. Sir, I want to ask you that if these universities even come, and government believes that if these universities come, maybe our brain drain can be stopped. But my question to you, sir, is like, even if these universities, let's say Harvard comes tomorrow to India and set up its campus in India, but the 2 factors which you mentioned, socio-cultural ecosystem, and you said bureaucratic hurdles, do you think these universities will be independent of these factors?
Um, Probably not, because they have to gel well with the social structure here.
Right, sir.
But definitely they will bring a different culture.
Okay.
Okay. They will bring different set of people, right? Only time will say, see, policy is only an enabler,
Right,
but
sir.
the time will say how implementation is going to
Takes
take
place.
place.
Very true.
Government can be an enabler. Government can actually provide mechanisms for implementation, smooth mechanisms for implementation. But how the implementation will actually take place, there's a lot of other factors. How the society will perceive. Will people start saying that, like for example, in India, it is often said that people go for education to collect degrees rather than collect education.
Very true.
Okay. Now, is in the process, like earlier in the country, it was merit actually which defined how you actually get jobs. Today, it is also the, to a large extent, degrees also define how you get the job,
Very true.
right? And again, our numbers are too many. We have too many people.
Yeah.
Competition is very high.
Right,
When
sir.
competition is high, you again resort back to some kind of subjective evaluation to objective evaluation.
Right, sir.
Right? Courts after courts have actually given this kind of judgments where they discourage subjective evaluations, right? So in case of objective evaluations, we really don't have too many handles, right? Objective evaluations can only take place in terms of, where you did your numbering, education from, where you, how many marks you have, how many percentage you have, how many years you took our education, these kind of things. Now, this system requires a change. Every subjective evaluation does not mean that the evaluation is dishonest.
Right, sir.
Evaluation may have errors,
Right,
but
sir.
those are minor errors, right?
Very
But
true.
it doesn't mean that the system is dishonest.
Right, sir.
Errors and dishonesty have to be seen from two different lenses.
Right, sir.
They are two different set of things. And that I think we have to, as a society, mature and learn that these two are independent things. Till we understand that, the pressure on the society is that societal pressure is actually going to be very, very high. To say, like for example, in JE today, with just one mark here and there, the ranks can float from 500 to 1,000 here and there.
Right, sir.
Right? Now that's a very crazy system. One mark,
Yes.
it doesn't define the intelligence,
Yes. Very true.
but 1,000 ranks, they define what branch one student is going to take and
Right.
how depressed he is going to be for rest of his 4 years and subsequently in life.
Very true, sir.
That's a very, very important thing. So our society has to mature up, our society has to gear up, our society has to look at this, right? We actually have started, looking at, you talk to anybody, people say coaching institutions actually prepare for IIT, as if the coaching is an important phenomenon.
Yes.
It is not the practice, it is the education, it is the knowledge that defines a person.
Very true, sir.
And that, unfortunately, in our society, we have put it on the second seat.
Very true, sir.
NEP 2020 is seeking to correct this step. Hopefully, it will bring a holistic education.
Right, sir.
Hopefully, the implementation will be good, but it's only the time will tell
Yes.
how the
Implementation.
implementation actually will happen.
Very true, sir. Very true. Okay, Professor Rajat, now I come to my next question, which is related to your research area. So when I'm interacting with you into your capacities, sir. One very fine researcher and another as head of the institute. So my next question is related to the researcher and faculty of IIT Kanpur in this domain. So I want to ask you about your research area, sir, and what are the applications of your research areas in real world?
My area is computer science, and specifically in computer science, I work in systems, computer architecture, system security, computer security, data security, VLSI designs, operating system, and these are my areas, and they're all related areas in some sense. Okay, so that is my research area. But in that sense, we have actually done quite a lot of work and applied it to real world. Um, one of the earliest example of my research work was a smart card operating system that came out. And today, the government, we actually got a very good support from government, and government took that, and today it is actually there almost everywhere. It, all the driving licenses, vehicle registration numbers, in fact, MNREGA card, public distribution cards, public health card, postal cards. These are various schemes that came from the government on identity.
Okay.
Any chip card that you see today in driving license or vehicle registration, it has actually, the technology has actually come out from my lab
Okay.
in IIT Kanpur.
Great.
And I'm very happy that it is there now with everybody.
Yes.
Okay. Another technology that we worked on is electronic passports, where the passports could actually be read electronically in the various immigration counters. And in there, our technology is a lot better than the technology which is actually being used, for example, in America.
Okay.
It is a far much more secure technology, far much more robust technology and all that. But once again, the bureaucratic process, this technology we developed in 2008,
Okay.
12 years from now. I mean, 12 years earlier than from now. This technology we developed the passports also in collaboration with Ministry of External Affairs. The passports actually went through the interoperability test at various countries. They all succeeded, and there were no problem at all. In fact, for several years, diplomatic passports and official passports were actually electronic passports which are given using the technology that we developed. But then, since then till now, 12 years, that technology has not come to people for, again, variety of different processes, different bureaucratic hurdles.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, one requires a champion to come and say, we will implement. That
Yes,
championship doesn't exist.
Hmm.
That vision exists. People want to do it. Okay. But the championship doesn't exist. That trust doesn't exist.
That's true.
Okay. That's the basic problem. And every decision making takes a lot of time. So this is something that I think application in the real world often actually have this problem. But another technology that we worked on is highly implemented in real world. We worked on electronic voting machines, EVMs, and VVPAT, voter verifiable paper audit trail. 2019 elections were fully done with VVPAT. Okay. And from 2004 onward, EVMs are in use. I myself work on M3 machines, third generation machines, which are actually in use from 2019 elections. Everywhere, it is only M3 machines which are in use. So very robust machine. Again, the technology which is the highest in its own class implemented anywhere in the world. In fact, it is the largest implementation of public key cryptography anywhere in the world for any project, whether it's finance, banking, authentication, whatever. This is the largest implementation of public key cryptography anywhere in the world. No parallel to that, including even mobile phones. So this is a huge technology that has been developed and actually in real use. Okay. We developed this with two other professors, three of us, Professor D.T. Shani of IIT Delhi and Professor Dinesh Sharma of IIT Bombay, and myself. Three of us did it together, and it is being implemented and manufactured by BEL, Bharat Electronics Limited, and ECIL, Electronics Corporation of India Limited. It's there everywhere. Yet another technology that we worked and defined was the electronic toll collection, ETC. Today, it is there in all highways, right? So some of these technologies actually came from my lab, and we worked on them. We showed this, and they are actually in real use.
Okay. But we only hope, Professor Rajat, as you said, that some champion is required for it to fructify and commercialize and implement it.
Absolutely. Every
So,
time there is a user level commitment. It was there in driving licenses. It was there in vehicle registration. It was there in national ID card. It was there in public distribution systems and all that. And it was there in voting machines.
okay,
Wherever there is a user level commitment, I think technology moves very rapidly.
very true.
Whenever it is a technology that you develop and then you go around and showcasing the technology, saying this is what I've developed, user doesn't take it.
Yes, yes. So this is also one kind of, sir, direction which you have given to the researchers, that in which direction they should proceed.
Absolutely.
That is how you can identify. Professor Rajat, my next question is related to the entrepreneurial opportunities which are existing in your field of research, because there will be so many students of yours, sir, in undergraduate and masters and doctorate, who will look forward to go for entrepreneurship or start their ventures or startups. This is the time required for that. So, sir, related to your field of research, what are such opportunities where youngsters should proceed forward?
So Vijender, as you said, this is a very interesting thing. This is the right time for doing entrepreneurial activities.
Right, sir.
Now I'll tell you why it is the right time. Okay. So I think biggest reason why it is the right time is because information technology is making inroads in almost every walk of our life.
Yes, sir.
Whether it is healthcare, whether it is education, whether it is social entrepreneurship, whether it is governance, whether it is industrial automation, whether it is industry itself, whether it is design, everywhere IT or information technology is getting a major inroad.
Right, sir.
Okay. So therefore, entrepreneurial activity is by definition, this is the time for it.
Right,
Okay. The second reason why it is also important to understand is till now, the major consumer of technology was government.
right, sir.
Okay. Now suddenly the major, and I'm not talking of consumer electronics like TV, radio, and mobile phones. So I'm
Right.
talking more in terms of technology as technology development.
Right, sir.
Major source of technology actually came into the governance through governance procurement processes. And those were always dependent on taking on the lowest cost, taking the best, and these kind of things. Entrepreneurs are the worst affected by this because big companies can cross subsidize the product just to capture the market.
Yes, sir.
Which entrepreneur cannot, because entrepreneur in his basket will have only one or two or three products.
Right, sir.
Most of the entrepreneurial activity that actually happened in the past in India, successful entrepreneurial activity has been in the social infrastructure.
Okay.
Right? Whether it is e-commerce, it happened because people found it easy to actually order and supply chain was there and therefore it could be supplied. Right?
Right.
So whether it was in e-commerce, it actually happened. Or even if it was in other areas, it actually happened because of, so I would not call e-governance as an entrepreneurial activity,
Right.
because that was a service provided by the government.
Right, sir.
Right? But any time when you actually look at the entrepreneurial activity which has succeeded, it is largely because of they connected to people, not because they connected to government.
Right, sir.
Bangalore has huge number of entrepreneurial activity. For example, in Bangalore, you could actually order chai, okay, on these platforms, social platforms, and it actually is delivered. Hot tea is
Okay.
delivered, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for your meetings.
Yes.
Food is delivered for your meetings.
Yes, sir.
But then it's a huge technology which is there. One doesn't really recognize that, but it's a huge entrepreneurial activity. In fact, if you want some small job to be done, like some photocopy to be done, some document to be given in some office or something, you actually have a serviceman available, right? You can actually order some sites. You can actually go and look for these services. Somebody will come, collect the documents, give it there, get the receipt from there and get it to you. If you have to pay the electricity bill, and you can either go online and pay, and if you cannot do this, you can ask this service and he will actually go and do this.
Right, sir.
So now these are highly contextual. For these kind of service, the only model exists is in India, because the systems are bureaucratic. You have to run around, okay, and therefore this can happen. And these are the entrepreneurial activities which actually do come. And now, why am I saying that entrepreneurial activity of high-tech area will actually have a good market today? Is because a lot of people are actually looking for such kind of abilities.
Okay.
In private space.
Okay.
Right? In private space, people have actually shown how to do a marketplace, and marketplace is a good example which any entrepreneur will actually require, whether it is Flipkart, Snapdeal, or whatever. So people have shown how to do marketplace. People have actually worked on the solutions of providing Indian languages.
Okay.
People have worked on providing solutions of as simple a thing as accounting systems.
Yes.
Right? Scanning. So these apps and all that have come about.
Right.
And these are all entrepreneurial activities. So more and more entrepreneurial activities are growing in this area. People are actually getting into the app market. And for the app, consumer is the common person, not the government.
Right.
And that's why apps actually are able to flourish, because they see the market.
Right.
Very high-end technology go in there because the entrepreneurs actually make it available. As simple a thing as video conferencing. In fact, right now we are talking on Zoom. Zoom itself is a solution that came out of entrepreneurial activity. But in this country, there are about 10 video conferencing solutions. Some are far much better and far much superior than even platforms like what Microsoft provides or Google provides or Zoom provides.
Right.
Okay. So this has been an entrepreneurial activity. So the times are absolutely right for entrepreneurial activity. Why it is available in my domain of research? Because my domain of research is actually to build systems, whether it is software systems or hardware systems. Right. So it's highly, highly relevant, and the markets are getting generated today.
Right.
So it's a huge amount of entrepreneurial opportunities which exist in my area of work.
Right, sir. That's great. That's great, sir. My next question to you, Professor Rajat, is you being as head of the institute. So, being professor of IIT Kanpur, I have other day I was interacting with the director of IIT Roorkee. So these kind of institutes are, sir, well-established institutes. IIT Roorkee, as you know, is a very old institute. So I want to ask through you that what are the challenges of a director for the institute which is in the initial phases? There are opportunities and there are challenges. I want you to tell something about that.
I think I would actually not call it challenges. I actually see everything as an opportunity.
That's true.
So let me explain this, issues or these opportunities that are relevant. It's just a question of how best you utilize them.
Right, sir.
I think the biggest opportunity that I see here is when people come, they are not the top rankers. They are mid rankers or low rankers. In other words, they actually have a hunger for doing things.
Very true.
Okay. They actually want to excel in their life.
Right, sir.
And when they want to excel in their life, they are willing to do everything that they can in order to do this. And I think this is the biggest opportunity that we have. The second opportunity that I say is, unlike older institutions where we have very senior faculty, senior staff, junior staff, and there's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas that happens.
Right, sir.
Here, everything is a germination of idea.
Right, sir.
Because we don't have old faculty members. Everybody is growing with the system. But that's a big opportunity, because then we don't come with the drawback or the baggage of the past.
Right, sir.
Everything is a start.
Right, sir.
We can set up the things. And indeed, people actually love that. So that's another big opportunity, because changing an existing system is far much more difficult than building a new system.
Very true. Very true.
The third is actually another, opportunity for learning. Our campus is being built, new campus. I think it gives me a huge amount of learning.
Yes, obviously.
I never knew anything called civil engineering, except maybe a little bit of solid mechanics of solid and that kind of things that I might have done in my undergraduate program.
Right, sir.
But today, I learned a lot about architecture. I learned a lot about construction. I learned a lot about project management. I learned a lot about, and all these are very, very relevant. Now, this is a huge opportunity. And it's a huge opportunity because a lot of my faculty members and students are getting exposed to this. This probably doesn't happen in an established place for two reasons. Number one, they will not have such huge projects of construction. The projects will be smaller. Number two, people will not get involved in these things. So it's a huge opportunity that we get. Of course, every opportunity comes with the biggest challenge, and that is that in a day, if instead of 24 hours, we had 48 hours. This is the only wish list.
Right, sir.
So then only we could actually grasp more, we could learn more, we could do more.
Right, sir.
That possibly is there, not available to anybody, but I think even in the older places, one requires that much of time. So time is always the shortest.
Okay, great, sir. Okay, Professor Rajat, my next question to you, sir, is, I don't know it should be asked or not, but where is the IIT Bhilai as institute amongst various other IITs?
I think we stand together. That's the way I put it.
Yes.
Whether it's an old IIT, new IIT, or any kind of place,
Right,
every place has its own strengths and its own weaknesses,
right, sir.
own opportunities and own loss of opportunities.
Right, sir.
Right. And I think IIT Bhilai in that sense stands pretty tall, right? Because we are a small place, therefore individual attention is possible to students.
Right, sir.
The students are not coming which are top notchers, and therefore there is a zeal to learn.
Right, sir.
There is a hunger to learn. There is a motivation or passion to do things.
Right, sir.
Okay. I think if you actually ask where does IIT Bhilai stand, actually in India we have various kinds of ranking systems, right? NIRF ranking, National Institutional Ranking Framework, which is done by MHRD.
Right, sir.
Institutions are not permitted to be ranked, or institutes are not entitled for ranking for first 7 years of their existence.
Okay.
So we don't even come in there.
Right.
But I'm sure the day we come in, we will be very high.
Okay, great.
We will be in mid of other IITs,
Right.
So it's not, I'm absolutely sure of that.
Okay.
Because we actually have been following processes which are very, similar, sometimes better, sometimes notch below, sometimes notch higher of any other place, right? So we actually provide a lot of flexibility because we can provide it. We are a small place. We can provide individual attentions. We can look at individual people. So all these things are pluses. And therefore, these pluses are actually going to show up in our ranking whenever we are ranked. Right. So I'm sure we stand with every other IIT.
That's great. That's great. Professor Rajat, I would like to ask you something related to 3D printing lab, sir, which is very much famous, and I could see a lot of things on the website also of IIT Bhilai. So from your side, sir, something about this lab.
I think what we do is, see, in our curriculums, we have actually defined for every student to go through effectively what is known as build language of every department.
Okay.
Right? So like, for example, computer science, they do programming. Programming is the build language for computing.
Yes.
In electrical engineering, they do circuit design. Circuit design is a build language of electrical engineering.
Right, sir.
Similarly, in mechanical engineering, workshops or whatever is a build language of mechanical engineering.
Right, sir.
Except that we thought instead of doing the real workshop like lathe and all that, we do smaller units which are safer. Okay. And get into more modern things. So solid modeling, and building those solid models using 3D printing.
Right, sir.
And similarly do this machining on soft materials using tabletop machines, which are lathe, milling machines, shaping machines, I mean all that kind of thing, which are tabletop, very small, 1 feet by 1 feet space kind of machines.
Right,
Okay, so these are the kind of thing we thought, because they are safer.
Right, sir.
They don't require, for every student, if you have to do, you have to really think of safety is the primary concern, and students are known to actually not follow all the safety protocols, and therefore reinforcing them that you must follow this so that accidents don't happen is a big liability on the institution.
Right, sir.
So we thought we will do in this way. So we do 3D printing as form making, as shape making, and based on solid modeling and printing.
Right, sir.
We do laser cutting for variety of shape making, you know, on soft materials and assembling. And we do tabletop machining and all that for everybody to do effectively safer turning machining processes.
Right, sir.
We do you know, very interesting casting designs, you know, rather than with hot metal, we do with epoxies. So again, no problems, you know, they can actually touch it by hand and all that. So it is safer. And that's what is the build language of mechanical engineering that everybody does.
Right, sir.
Using 3D printing, people can actually do very rapid prototyping. And
Right, sir.
some students have done very interesting project works, which we tell them to come up and think of. And people actually do this solid modeling, sometimes with internet help, sometimes without internet help. These are the projects that they are given. And then they actually do a 3D printing.
Right, sir. Okay.
So it's a very interesting thing. In fact, during the COVID time, we actually made a helmet
Okay.
prototype using 3D printing.
Great. Great.
Right. So it was a very and very safe helmet prototype that we made.
Okay.
So some of these things actually we could do with the 3D printing.
Right, sir.
And every student actually goes through the 3D printing lab, whether he's from computer science or electrical or mechanical or any other.
Okay. Okay. That's great, sir. Professor Rajat, whenever some institute of eminence is created in some region, like Bhilai mein, now there is a IIT. So one of the responsibility of such institute is also to provide some kind of solution of the problem society is facing. And research should always be done in that direction. Research will be purposeful if that research solves some kind of problem of the society. So I want to ask you, sir, the research focus of IIT Bhilai and what domains are being focused in that?
So I think organically we have grown multidisciplinary research areas.
Right, sir.
And there are at least 3 major research areas where multiple people are working.
Right, sir.
One of them is on solar cells and solar energy.
Right, sir.
People are developing new solar cells and electronics around it and all that. So it's a very interesting solar cell project, flexible solar cells and these kind of things. The second project that we are looking for, or second thing that we are looking for, is energy storage,
Okay.
batteries,
Right, sir.
lithium ion and hydrogen cells and other kind of sulfur based batteries and these kind of batteries that we are actually looking at the materials for batteries, the material for variety of, so there's like polymers, materials, chemistry, machining, and everything actually gets associated in making these. Again, we have a huge group that is actually working towards that.
Right.
And the third major group is on data security and computer security, both in terms of hardware and software. Again, our people in electrical discipline, electrical engineering discipline, and computer science discipline, they are working together in providing these kind of framework, both hardware and the software, security of data. And in time to come, the data is going to be the leading thing, not the algorithm. So how do we provide data science? We actually initiated a new program on data science and artificial intelligence. And it's a BTech program in data science and artificial intelligence. In fact, right now in the JEE Advanced, the admissions are taking place in this. These are the kind of things which are actually going to define our research areas around data.
Right, sir.
and data science, security, and collection of, doing analytics of data, doing visualization of this data. All these things are actually going to take place. So these are the kind of research areas that we are focusing right now. Of course, individually, there are other research areas also where we actually work. I mean, people work in architecture, people work in networks, people work in machining, people work in 3D printing, deposit-based printing, newer machining technologies, newer tools, uh, and all kind of, fluidics, microfluidics, all these kind of areas people are working on. But I think these three are the major research groups that are organically grown. And I think we are also looking at now yet in the area of EVs, electronic vehicles.
Okay, great.
So these are the new modern era areas that we are looking for.
Okay, Professor Rajat, I want, as you said, that new IIT, new opportunities, and you mentioned also that they are more like opportunities than challenges. I want one of the opportunity for new system is to introduce a curriculum which suits the market requirements, sir. So I want to ask you, sir, what are the new industry related or market related courses or these kind of domains IIT Bhilai is introduced? You just mentioned about artificial intelligence and all also. So this question is related to that only, sir. Is IIT Bhilai planning or coming out with such kind of courses which are more related to industry requirements?
We are actually, this is there in our plan. We have already started data science and AI, which is a big industry need for today.
Right,
I mean, actually, we look at artificial intelligence is there almost everywhere.
Right, sir.
It is actually understood that AI in industry, in defense, in healthcare, in social economics, in finance, everywhere, AI is actually going to rule the roost of tomorrow.
Right, sir.
So this is absolutely market oriented, industry oriented, data science and AI, which is actually started this year. Right. We are also thinking of starting newer technologies like electronic vehicles or e-vehicles.
Right.
We are also looking at technologies like finance and payment systems, where huge amount of computing actually has gone around. Right. And we actually have been establishing what is known as technology incubation hub in the area of e-payments. Once again, I think we will actually be doing quite a lot of educational system also in new areas. And individually on every program, we have actually built quite a lot of do it by hand independent projects and such kind of things, which are largely industry oriented.
Right, sir. That's great. Professor Rajat, I want to ask you, sir, like you mentioned about data science, artificial intelligence and all, and there are many students who are lucky to be part of BTech courses in IITs. But then there are many students, sir, India is a huge country, and there are many students who miss their targets to enter into IIT at BTech level. So they aspire to join the IIT system in higher education courses like MTech, MS courses and all. So I want to ask you, sir, these courses which you just now mentioned, artificial intelligence and data science, are they courses for masters you are mentioning? And if yes, can any branch of student, let's say mechanical engineer, civil engineer, can they also join these courses?
No, we are right now, this year we have started with only BTech program. Okay, in data science and AI. But AI as a curriculum also exists in the computer science program. Right. And for masters, our programs are very, very flexible because the master's students can define their own track. Right, sir. It is largely elective driven, and therefore they can actually define their own track. Somebody can take AI only, somebody can take software engineering only, somebody can take theoretical computer science. Right. So they can actually do specific to their need or specific to their desire. In all, whether it's electrical engineering or computer science or mechanical engineering, programs are very, very flexible. Hopefully, very soon we will start with the master's program in DSAI also. Right. I think we are currently highly dependent on the hostel. IITs are hostel based education systems, fully residential systems. And since we don't have our own campus, we actually have a difficulty in terms of handling the hostels. And when we actually put people outside in some residential towers, it is not quite the same thing as providing the residential accommodation, because every time they have to come in, they have to come by buses, then they have to go back by bus transports and all that. It is not a free movement that they can take place. So this is the issue. I mean, our PhD and master's students actually, they are provided accommodation outside of the campus, and they actually would live there. As soon as this problem is tackled, we are actually all geared up to start new programs in masters, and we would be actually starting that.
Yeah, because sir, you are also from IISc Bangalore. You have done your doctorate from there, and IISc Bangalore has started artificial intelligence quite recently, I think 1 or 2 years back, for a master's course for all the branches. So I'm very sure if this kind of department comes for higher education in new IITs also, it will be very, very helpful for the
we would be starting with AI, and in that AI applications would actually come from various other domain knowledge. Right. So our idea is to actually have that.
Yeah, that's great, sir. Professor Rajat, my next question is related to something which is very close to the heart of students, and that is a placement situation. So new IIT, old IIT, location, place, these are the parameters for campus placement companies also to visit the placement. So what is the situation of placement as of now in IIT Bhilai, sir?
See, IIT Bhilai placement situation is very, very decent. Okay. And when we talk of placement, we only look at the industrial placement.
Right, sir.
Right, because a lot of people actually go for higher education and all that. We don't actually count them into the placement, but we count them towards the statistics, and therefore the statistics may actually appear low.
Right, sir.
Okay. But placement opportunities and the placement are actually very, very good.
Okay.
In computer science and electrical engineering, it has been all 85% and above. And if I actually ignore those who did not want to take the job, then it would be something like 95, 98%.
Great, sir.
Okay. In mechanical engineering, the placement numbers are little lesser, but it is primarily because the mechanical engineering students would like to take IT jobs.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And most IT industry today actually have changed their strategy of their hiring strategies, and they actually take people only from related areas like computer science, electrical, or IT. And very few industries actually take it from other branches. And even when they take it, it is primarily for run-of-the-mill kind of work, not necessarily in the real software development. Okay. So lot of companies actually came in mechanical engineering to provide jobs, and our faculty in charges who actually worked for placement and all that did exceptionally well along with the entire placement team. A lot of people actually came, a lot of industries came. Okay. But many of these industries, especially in mechanical engineering, did not take anybody because there was nobody to actually apply for those jobs.
Okay. Okay.
So this was ironical, okay, but that's the way it was. And on the other hand, our mechanical engineering placement numbers would have been lesser because they were all looking for non-mechanical engineering jobs.
Okay. Okay.
So that is the basic thing. But in general, I think our placement situation is extremely good.
Okay. Great.
In fact, even for the second batch, the placement have already started, and we already have about close to 20%. I mean, this just started a few days back. Already close to 20% placements done. Okay. For the entire thing. This is in the difficult times when companies are not able to visit.
Very true. It's an online campus. So right. My next question to you, sir, is related to the foreign collaborations of IIT Bhilai.
We actually had collaborations with various universities. We had collaborations with universities in Taiwan. We have had collaborations with universities in US. We have had collaborations with universities in Germany. Right. And several of our faculty members actually have come from these universities after doing postdoctoral or doctoral outside. So our linkages with these universities are very, very high.
Okay.
So we have been working with several universities, and in fact, as a very novel concept, we actually teach Chinese because we believe that in the newer world there is a huge amount of uh, you know businesses will take place with Chinese and Taiwanese and in that part of the world, and therefore language such as Chinese or Mandarin is actually going to be very good to learn.
Right,
And
sir.
we introduced this in our curriculum. And as part of this collaboration, somebody comes from Taiwan and teaches this.
Okay,
There is
that's
a
great.
faculty exchange program also where our faculty goes there and their faculty comes here. And
Right,
we
sir.
actually do this kind of teaching and collaborative learning and all that. So this is actually, we have been working with various foreign universities
Universities.
in that sense.
That's good. Professor Rajat, for a director of a new institute, the main challenge is to attract the best brain as faculty in the institute, because that is something which is very, very important. So, sir, I want to ask you, what is the effort done by you or IIT Bhilai in attracting the best brain as faculty of IIT Bhilai?
I think what we did was we actually reached out to people,
Right, sir.
okay, both in terms of faculty saying if you have students, brilliant students, please refer to them,
Right, sir.
as well as it to directly to students also
Right, sir.
through our faculty members or directly.
Right, sir.
Okay. And we actually have been able to get
Right, sir.
very good quality faculty members.
Right, sir.
Um, all faculty members in our institutes are minimum PhD degree holder.
Right, sir.
More than 80% of our faculty members have had exposure to IIT or IISC
Right,
as
sir.
students,
Right, sir.
right? And postdoctoral fellowship outside the country or PhD outside the country.
Right, sir.
So there is a huge, quality emphasis that we had on faculty.
Right, sir.
Even when we have taken from universities and all that, these are primarily for those departments like liberal art department and these kind of places,
Right,
where
sir.
we have taken people from some of the best places,
Right, sir.
central universities or research labs like CSIR and these kind of labs, from where we have taken this CSIR Academy. So we have actually taken some of the best people
Okay.
from all over the country
Right, sir.
and all over the world.
Right, sir. Great.
This is the effort that we did. We reached out to various people, we reached out to various faculty members and asked them for reference.
Okay. Professor Rajat, I have come to my last question of the interaction, sir. And that question is related to higher education courses in IIT Bhilai. Normally, sir, it is observed that in IITs, the main focus is on undergraduate students. Yeah, that is supposed to be the main product of IITs, unlike IISCs and all. I want to ask you, sir, like if research we have to promote, the focus has to be on higher education courses also, like MTech, MS, PhD. So why a student who aspires to go for higher education course should join IIT Bhilai? So why he should join?
Actually, it is not entirely true that our focus has been on undergraduate.
Right,
It is just that IITs are known for JE program
right, sir.
because it's a program where 12 lakh, 13 lakh people actually appear.
That's true, sir.
Okay, and with the aspirations to join IIT, and therefore, from the social thing, one actually sees and says that it is, undergraduate education that is well known for.
Right,
But
sir.
the fact is that all IITs put together have produced more postgraduate students than undergraduate students.
That's true, sir. That's
When we look at the industry, our industry actually has more postgraduate students than undergraduate students, and large number of postgraduate students are there in uh, various industries and research labs from IITs.
right.
So it's a huge amount of higher education which actually gets outside, from IITs.
Right.
Now, how does it actually happen? I think to a large extent, I would say competitive exams like JEE are the major culprit.
Right, sir.
Okay, And that coupled with every parent's desire to actually give the best to the student in terms of his job and all that, and therefore, kind of promote saying that in place of education, take degree. I think from that perspective, if you look at, there is a huge social infrastructure that actually comes in. However, by the time students come for choosing higher education, the decision making completely shifts to the students rather than to parents.
Right, sir.
And when it shifts to the students actually look for the knowledge, because they have an option now. They have an option to not go for the knowledge, but not go for the higher education, but go for the job. And they can very well exercise that option, right? And therefore, when a student chooses a higher education, he is choosing not for the job, but for the education. And in that process, he also gets the job. And this is our experience in higher education. Now, why should a student actually choose higher education? It is my personal belief that students must go for higher education.
Yes.
And I will actually explain this in a very simple thing. In BTech program, it is really an engineering problem solving education, situational awareness and problem solving. So when we actually do a design problems or any manufacturing problems, anything, the parameters are given. People are actually apply those parameters, apply those formulas to showcase their understanding.
Right.
The real life is not like that. In real life, you have to collect your parameters.
Yes.
And then apply your learning. Okay. And in fact, it will be really very, very lucky. So to even correct your parameters, even to know that you know this problem. What MTech education actually describes or provides is a slightly loosely coupled education. In that, students actually define their problems. They actually get their parameters. It is not given to them in an exam paper, and then do a designing, which is more closer to the real time. But then at least the problem is known, right? Somebody has defined the problem, or together they have defined a problem. They are only refining. It's a loosely defined problem, but they are only refining the thing. By the time one comes to the PhD, even the problem is not known. So they have to look for the area, they have to look for the problem, they have to define the problem, they have to define a method on how to solve that problem, accordingly design experiments, accordingly collect information, and then do this. So this is more close to a real life problem, because if you were to be entrepreneur, you have to look for what area you want to do. If you were to go into the education, teach, you really need to know what you should be teaching and how should you be teaching and how should configure it. And the area will continue to be advancing, and therefore you must contribute to that advancement. If you go into governance, again, you have to look for the problems, right? And solve those problems, abstract out those problems in certain ways so that the problems are solvable. That's where I think PhD program or PhD actually prepares people. But doesn't mean that MTech students cannot do that.
Yes, that's true.
A lot of people actually can do it because they actually learn it on the job.
Right, sir.
So they basically become at par with the PhD in that sense, to sniff through the problems.
Right, sir.
Okay. And it's not that BTech students cannot do that.
Yeah.
But the point is, having grown into the system to learn it versus there is a formal education system which prepares for that. Right. There is a difference between the two.
Very true.
Everybody who goes to this formal system doesn't mean that he's going to be successful as a recipe.
Very
but
true.
The probability increases.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
And similarly, everybody who does not go through this formal education doesn't mean that he will be, destined for a disaster in that sense. No, because people actually learn in their job. Okay, so there are all kind of spectrum of colors which are available. Right. And why should somebody join MTech and PhD? Because it actually provides those opportunities on how to define your problem and how to solve this problem, which often people don't have exposure to in undergraduate program, even when it is IITs.
Right, sir.
Okay, IITs may have a slightly better exposure, but in other places they don't have that exposure at all.
Very true, sir. Very true. So, Professor Rajat, it was a wonderful interaction with you, sir. I have come to an end of this session, and I'm really very happy that, sir, I could get the answers to all my queries. And through this, I'm very sure students will get benefited through your views and your ideas, sir. Really, thanks to you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Nice to interact with you, Vijender. And
Thanks
it was
a lot.
always a pleasure to actually interact.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.